happy to help. Basically, this slate that has been remade specifically for Mac has every transition in things available, things like this. Really simple transitions, but if that's the thing that you wanted to learn or see, we can talk about it. It's a very easy subject, and it's a thing that you can do in no time. Any source that you have, like you can see here and here, it's the same source, but it's just different size and different things happening. This is made possible with the Move Transition plugin. You need to install Move Transition on OBS. Once you have this, you will have the ability to add move. You have a lot of settings that are pretty clean and pretty useful, as in when do you want the elements to go away and all that. This is the basic plugin that you need to have in order to get the basic transition between scene A and scene B. Basically, what the plugin does is it takes elements that have the same name and it moves them off screen or on screen. This one is color source, and on scene 2 it doesn't exist. If I take it with a command C and I paste it here with a command V and I move it here, if I move back to scene 1, it will just reposition itself. And if here I were to resize it, even if with a stretch something, it will interpolate in between frames. Move Transition gives you the ability to have movement in your content. However, if you want to do things like more in-depth like this one's, you need a bit more plugins than just that. Because you're on Mac, you need to download the plugin called OBS Shader Filter Mac. That's the thing that you need in order to do the rounded corners. The shader filter will give you the ability to do shaders, and Move Transition will help you to move things around. When you look at these two scenes, because these are one of the best presentation of what you can do, the camera, this is the camera right here, is resizing itself, it's changing its aspect ratio, and it's getting bigger. And the chat right here and the alert right here are changing their aspect ratio and like resizing themselves. You can see in the browser source here that it's cropping the top, and this one is just extending itself. What's happening and how it's set up is very simple. In the element itself, you have a ton of filters, which you can see right here. I have a blur filter, which is my base thing. I have a crop filter and a radius filter. Radius is OBS Shader Filter. When you install it, you have the rounded rectangle shader, which is available by default, and you can do all the things that you want. But the ability to resize and still keep the radius is with the crop and the radius combined. You need to crop with a filter and not crop manually. If I were to crop manually my content right here, well, with the option key, you can see that it's sharp on the side. That's not what we want. We want to keep that. And in order to keep our radius, we need to crop the content with the crop filter. It's a very simple thing. You use the crop filter here, you define your values, and you're done. And then you can see at the bottom I have the transitions, which basically this one is just a divider to organize my filters. And then I have what we can call keyframes. If I click on crop default, you can see that my element is resizing itself. If I click on crop square, it resizes itself specifically. Rectangle is the tiniest one. Square face is the one that I need or use here. And then my radius, I can change from tiny to chatting to default to 4 potentially, if that's something that is important or useful. And they all have specific use case and values, and all of these filters right there are enabled by move transition. And so only move transition have the ability to create these specific key values for what you want to do. Does that make sense far? So right now it's not placed properly. Okay, that is here to showcase something. I will move to the weird thingy that we have here, and we'll do some tiny changes on that. Let's reframe this element. It's Command R to reset. In the element itself that you want to edit, you have a ton of options. Depending on your content and the thing that you want to resize, I really recommend you to change the position of the anchor point or origin of the element. By default is on the top left. For ease of placement, I like centered, but you could have it center, top center, or whatever. That's very easy. It is annoying in the beginning when you don't understand it, but then once you understand how it works, like it's pretty cool. I usually do center. Remember that if you select something in one specific scene, it doesn't apply to the same element in another scene unless you copy paste it from the other one. Right now, because I said center to the other one, we need to do center to this one as well. That way, let's put this one here and this one here, and the origin is in the middle of this, and we're good with that. So from here, what I want to do is add a filter, which is a crop filter, which I always name crop. That's our base. Add another filter, which is an user-defined shader, which will be our radius. Here, you need to load shader from text file. It makes your thing disappear. That's fine. You browse, it should point you directly to the shaders available in the plugin that you just installed, OBS Shader Filter Mac. You have one that is called Rounded Rect. So that's the rounded rectangle shader, and you just need to round corners. So let's say you have a 60 here and no crop, and now you have this. The radius is achieved by changing the radius here. If you want to have a border, you need to define the value of your border. So let me just select a color that will be burning our eyes. As you can see, I do a 10 value, and because it's outside, similar to CSS, we need to add 10 pixel in each direction to get the right amount, visually the right amount of things. Let's say you wanted to have it like at 6, I don't know, you can keep 10, but you can also just put 6, just in order to get that properly placed, right? Now that these filters are assigned to the source itself, if I go back into the source, filters are still here. From here, once you have move transition, you have move source and move value, and you want to keyframe your transitions with the move value filter. Move source is for the scenes, and move value is for the keyframing. It can be used on the scene, but it's also pretty useful, or mainly used on a source. Move value. And here, let's say I want to change my radius to be a circle. Let's call that radius, and I always do that -4, because 4 will create a circle. Now, you select the filter that you want. You want to use the radius filter as a base, and you want to use a single setting, potentially, and the single setting that you want is the corner radius. It's currently set at 40, and you can get value if you wanted to. If you wanted to check, you can come in here, do your thing to check how much radius you need before it starts to become like a weird shape. So like it seems to be 200. And now I can just get value. It takes 200. Then I duplicate it. And instead of full, I call it, I don't know, default. And I know that my default was 40. I go back to 40 here. If I toggle the eyes, which is enabling the filter, I have the radius that comes in, radius that comes out. You can see that it's pretty fast, and the reason for that being pretty fast is because the duration is custom. So what we want to have is not a custom duration. When you say not a custom duration, it will take the transition duration, which is currently set to 1200. If I now go back to default, you can see that it's more like it's smoother. It takes the full 1200 millisecond. That's the basic here. What I do is I use whichever thing that I know don't work, this one, and I call it transitions. And because it's a filter that cannot be used here, just place it here to have a divider. It's just a visual divider. It's helpful. But then let's say you wanted to have a crop in that specific thing. You need to do the same thing. Let's say I use the default, I duplicate it. I always do duplicate because it's easier, it's faster than just going at the bottom and everything. And now I want to change the crop to default. So let's say crop dash default, right? That far's good. We change that to crop. We want a single setting? No, you want all the settings for the crop. And here you just say, okay, crop is at 0. You get the values just to make sure. Because you duplicated from the previous one, you are in a custom duration, that's fine. And then everything is fine. You don't need to do anything else. You could potentially say, when filter become active, here you can activate that. In all of them, it's easier to do that. It's not needed, but it's easier. Now, let's say I want to have a bit of a crop on both sides to trim my shape. What I'm doing here, going from here, which is full size, and then here is just taking the sides. Duplicate it. Here, what I want to do is add 80 pixel on the left side and on the right side. And that's all, that's done. But issue number 1, as soon as I click on crop slim, you can see that my radius, which is at 100%, doesn't really work. What you need to do is go at the bottom here and do a simultaneous move. Will take all the filters that are available in your stack. Right now, I want the radius default to take place at the same time. And now, that means that if we go to crop default, we are here. If we go to crop slim, we are here. However, if we're on crop default and radius 4, we are at 100% in radius, so it's a circle. And then if we do a crop slim, it will do the thing properly. Simultaneous? Am I not saying it? Yes, because it's a word that I don't know how to pronounce. At the same time, you could have this happen. And that's the first things that you need to do. Defining the states of your elements. These are just filters, and they are just available, like these transition things are just available if you have move transition. If you don't have move transition, it doesn't work. However, now is the really interesting thing. Right now, if I change scene, nothing happened because that's not something that was defined. What you need to do is go in the scene filters, and now you do a move source. And so the move source is defined in a specific way. Naming convention is really useful at this time. You want to have, in order to just easily see what you want to do. You want to have the name of the source that you are moving and the name of the effect that you are affecting. Right now, the green thing is the camera. Let's say camera, you need to select the right source here, and at the bottom in the simultaneous move, you will have the filters tied to that specific source. We are trying to get the crop default, and that's done. Now you duplicate that thing and you call the radius filter. So it's the same thing, and at the same time you want to have the radius of 4 potentially. Right here I will just copy filter because it's easier, go to scene, paste filter, and go in the filter thing, and that way I have my camera crop and my camera radius that are already used. Right here on this second scene, I want my crop to be crop slim, and I want my radius to be not full because that's not available, and my radius to be default. However, from what we defined earlier, we know that when crop is set to slim, simultaneously there is the radius that also take place. We could get rid of that. I don't recommend it, but we could get rid of that. In order to get rid of that physically, I will just go in the filter here, go in crop slim, and get rid of that here to avoid conflict into both things are trying to get the same filter to be triggered. And now if I move to scene 2, it should have changed, but it seems to not be that one. Yes, okay, it's activate. This one, activate, and then this one, activate. Here, it's rounded. Here, it resizes itself, it crops itself, and round the corner appropriately. That's basically how you do these transition in between scenes. As the basic thing, move transition itself is just moving elements inside of the screen, and then the move values will trigger specific things. If I go back to my slate and the filters, you can see that I have a lot of different things that can happen. I know that my camera blur can happen potentially. I know that my camera radius can happen as well, that the chat has a crop, that the to-do has a crop as well. All of these things, right, exist. And as other things that I defined, I have these filters that are specific to that scene to just place the camera in corners and just add it like a rotation because I'm a dumb fuck. That's just me. And these are like placement filters, and they are based on position. Transform in here helps. Does that make sense far? That's weird explanation. Right now I'm seeing as well that the bottom left has an issue in terms of placement. I can show you that. Here, by the way, if you didn't know, you can go into preview scaling and go into canvas while you hold the space bar. While you hold the space bar, you can move along, and then if you still hold the space bar, you can zoom in your OBS to be able to like see that things are not aligned. Right now, things are not aligned. I want this to be visually aligned with my corner. Because I changed this, these values are not right. I just do get transform, it changed the value a bit. Now it's placed properly. If I go back to scale to window, it should replace itself properly. Good. So now we're good. As a recap, one main parent filter that needs to always be activated: your crop at 0, your radius at 0, your blur at 0, like all the times. And then one move transition filter for each state of your source. If you need your source to be with a radius of 16 and with a radius of 24 and with a radius of 32. You need 3 different filters. And you need to do that as many times as you have sources and potential effect. As an example, this is my camera filter. I have a base crop, a blur, and a radius. These 3 right here are my main things. That's the thing that will be triggered by all the transitions that are under. And under that, I have crop with no crop, square, peel, raid, and then I have blur without blur, with a blur, and then radius, no radius, small radius, medium radius, full radius, peel radius. Then we have gradients. If I trigger the gradients, it's the bottom section. If I trigger the gradient out, trigger it out, and I have different crops, different radius specific to specific scene. So this is filters on top of a nested scene that you can't fucking see, because all of my content in all of my scenes are just nested scenes, basically. The camera, all of these are just filters on top of my scene itself, and then inside of it I have filters on the element. Make sense? I hope so. So yeah, all of these things, the move value plugin will just give you the ability to trigger any filter that you have as a parent. If you have, for example, right now we have a scroll filter that is added to this thing. We could trigger the scroll filter in one way or the other if we wanted to. On the, let me go into the raid thingy. On the raid, you have the colored shadow, and it has a hue shift of 360 degrees. It's a move value based on the hue filter. The rotation, it's a move value based on like a plus 180 degrees. And then the next one is triggering next move on. I didn't talk about that, that's true. At the bottom of your move filter, you also have the ability to define the next move. Right here, you have the simultaneous move and you have the next move. What it means is the move needs to complete itself. The 1200 millisecond needs to happen with all the things that have been presetted before, and once that's done, you just do a next move. If we go back to our test thing right here, damn it, that's our base. Let's say we wanted to have a weird thing here. I will add a filter and add a move source, and I want to rotate. The color source is the one that I need to have. I don't really care about the duration, but I care about the duration. Let's do a 3000 millisecond thing. I want to make it transform relative to things. I take the rotation right here and I do 180 degrees. Duplicate that. Usually I call it rotate more. And what I need to do is next move is rotate, and rotate next move is rotate more. And as soon as I click on rotate, I have that happen. It will do a plus 180 degrees, and because it has this ease in and out in the filter behavior right here in the easing, it does this bit of a stop. If I say no easing on this one and no easing on this one, we have a continuous rotation.